everyone, it's Paul with Cruise Planners Getaway Gang. I'm here with my partner in crime, Ed. How are you today, sir?
I'm sitting on the dock of the bay.
Yeah, and I'm coming at you on location from St. Lucia today. I just couldn't take it anymore, and I had to go on vacation. Actually, I'm just kidding. But this is a pretty cool background with the crashing waves, and I love the looks of that dock. I told you it looks kind of like Bonaire or somewhere down Aruba or somewhere down there. It looks beautiful. So
It's awesome, and it's funny that we both picked different backgrounds today because I think our main story is going to be some of these. Where can you go, right? The
exactly.
destinations that are reopening to tourists
Yeah,
today.
we're definitely going to start talking about that some today. So we appreciate you being here with us. We know there is a lot. 2020 has been a lot to take in between COVID and some intense situations in the United States right now. We hope we can be a brief distraction. We understand there's a lot of important stuff going on, but we're here to talk travel for a brief moment, and I'm looking forward to it. I don't know about you, Ed, but I'm looking forward to it. So,
Absolutely, anything to get out your mind off of the woes of the world is good.
absolutely, I agree. So kick us off with the first story. Tell us a little what's going on in Hawaii, Ed.
All right, as you know, this is our news story, first travel talk live of the month. So we always start off with a little bit of news, and I got a story from Hawaii. Actually, Hawaii announced today that it's going to end its inter-island quarantine on June 16th as a first step in restarting the state's, largest private employment sector, which is tourism. They're going to start easing the restrictions a little bit. As you know, Hawaii has had one of the toughest
Yeah.
quarantine procedures most of the states. Believe it's still in place right now. If you fly from mainland America, you have to stay in your hotel room for 14 days, I believe. 14 or 15. Actually, it's a 14-day quarantine. What this means, though, is people traveling from inter-island, from let's say Maui to different islands, the main island, things like that. They won't have to wait the 2 weeks. But what they are going to have to do, probably fill out a new form, go through some tests, and some, health policies. So there's going to be some different policies in place. There's no timeline yet for the rest of like mainline or any other tourists, any other areas that are visiting any other countries. So right now, if you're flying to Hawaii, you still have to go through the quarantine period, but at least you can travel between islands without having to go through a quarantine.
Yeah, and I think it's a good sign that they're at least taking a step because, like you said, they've had the strictest travel policies and quarantine, and I think it's still going to be a while before people from the mainland can come, but it is a step in the right direction. I was
Yeah,
I was blown away by the fact that 1 in 6 people work in tourism somehow in Hawaii. So
they've been hit hard because of this the COVID-19.
yeah,
But so this is good news because Hawaii is a popular destination for people who live in Hawaii as well.
of course, yeah, absolutely. Well, that's a bit of good news. And I have some good news too from the cruising world, which I wanted to share because we've talked a lot about how we think it's going to look with cruising when they do go back into service, and we still aren't 100% sure when that's going to be. Nobody is. But Norwegian this week was the first company to actually put out in public a detailed account of the health policy changes that they're making so we can start to kind of officially see what cruising will look like on Norwegian, at least for the time being, when they do come back. So they are the first major cruise line to announce a more detailed look. And the plan is called Sail Safe. Of course, it had to have a catchy name. So they have developed it in close working relationship with the CDC, and it includes some immediate changes and actually some that they didn't announce that are still in development. So let's talk about quickly some of the immediate changes that you will see cruising on Norwegian, and I'm guessing some of the other cruise lines will do very similar things. New air filtration. They're going to install all new medical grade air filters, H13 HEPA filters that remove 99.95% of airborne pathogens across the entire fleet of ships to ensure that the air you breathe is clean. We've talked some about this. They're going to enhance their screening protocols. So all guests I mean, you do this now lightly, but all guests will undergo a more stringent pre-embarkation screening. The crew will undergo extensive screening prior to embarkation, and there will be constant monitoring throughout the voyage as well. Touchless temperature checks, we've heard about that in terms of taking temperature. This was a big one throughout the entire voyage. That will help them identify potential health issues. So they're going to start at the point where you're waiting to get on the ship prior to embarkation. They're going to do it every time you return to the ship after getting off at a port of call. They're going to do it prior to every meal in the food venues on the ship. They're going to do it prior to all activities in public venues and prior to disembarkation. So temperature taking is going to be a huge part of this new policy. Increased sanitation measures. They're going to do fogging in staterooms and public areas with something called hypochlorous acid. I've never heard of that. It's apparently actually a natural substance. It is non-toxic, but it very effectively kills bacteria, spores, and viruses. They're going to increase frequency of cleaning. We talked about this. Buffets. Norwegian at least says they are going to have buffets, but they will be full service. So there'll be no more touching of beverage stations, no more touching of food, spaced out full service buffets. They're going to up the hand washing and hand sanitizer, which they're already big on, to an even higher level. A couple more here. Responsible social distancing. So they're going to allow for this more social distancing. They're going to cut guest capacity on board, at least at first. They're going to stagger embarkation, and online check-in will be implemented for proper social distancing. And they're going to reduce capacity in all of the public areas throughout the voyage as well. Of course, they're going to enhance medical resources on board. The medical centers are all going to be expanded. They're going to be fully equipped with testing kits, medical supplies. They've increased the size of their medical teams fleet-wide. And each ship will have a dedicated isolation ward should the need arise for something like COVID-19, an outbreak, so that they can isolate and prevent the spread of that. And the last thing was extended ship to shore safety. So they're partnering with their local destinations and tour operators to ensure that they are also putting in to effect these protocols and extend that safety to your shoreside experience. So that was a lot to cover, but it's pretty cool that they've announced this, and I can actually start to, in my head, imagine how this might work. So,
well, you know what they say now, safety is the new sexy word in travel right now. Everybody is just loving safety, and that brings me to my next story. We've got some great announcements about some reopenings in Orlando. Universal Studios Orlando is opening June 5th. Hollywood Studios and Epcot is opening July 15th. Disney World, Magic Kingdom, and Animal Kingdom are opening July 11th. So it's coming up soon. It's all within the next 45 days.
Universal is we're only a couple days away from that.
Yeah, Universal's a couple days away.
And only a month away from Disney. Man, that's exciting.
But speaking of safety, employees and guests are going to be required to wear masks and undergo temperature screenings, just like on Universal, before entering the park. And then the parks are going to be reduced capacity. There's not going to be any parades, fireworks, or any other crowd events. They're going to expand cashless and contactless payment options. And then, of course, there's going to be hand sanitizers everywhere. So they're going to give it a go and practice. I'm sure they're going to be enforcing the social distancing as well in those parks. But, hey, there's at least something, right? I think a lot of people will take a getaway right now if they can get it.
Absolutely. And it's people... we're going to have to understand that these changes are here to stay for a while. So, I thought a lot about what you talked about yesterday in your videos about the hurricane season. People just need to be patient and understand that you're not going to be able to, have things just pop back to the way they were. If they ask you to wear a mask, if they're taking your temperature, be patient with that. Be patient with people. We've all been cooped up for a while. And that's the one thing I've thought about some as things start to reopen is I just don't want to see people lose their cool because, we've all been in this together, and I know we're tired of hearing that. But it's great that we're going to be able to have these experiences. But anyway, on to my final story on a similar kind of thought is what else is opening up? When are we going to be able to, we've talked about domestic travel and moving around closer to home, but when are we going to be able to get out of the country and where are we going to be able to go? Well, I'm going to give you the short answer first, and then we're going to talk about some popular destinations. The short answer is if you're American, not a lot of places right now, and probably not for a while to come. Spoiler alert. but this was a real interesting article, and obviously a lot of governments are still, speaking out against non-essential international travel, and I get that. But there are a lot of popular destinations that are starting to come back. They really need help with tourism, and I want to talk through those. So let's rapid fire through some of those. So we kind of know about what's going on. I'll start with Cyprus. They are very ready to get back into the tourism game because it's a big part of their economy. They are actually so ready that they are offering to pay the costs for any travelers who may test positive for COVID-19 while they come on vacation to this Mediterranean island nation. So hotels reopened yesterday on June 1st. International air travel will restart June 9th. But as I mentioned, US, UK, they're off the list for now, and they are mainly focusing on getting more local folks from the EU to come.
Right. Bali says that they're ready for more tourists as well. They released a statement saying that they are open for business, and infection rates have been remained low in the Indonesian island, and they hope to welcome guests back by October. And it's been devastating their economy there, but they're not sure how what restrictions are going to be lifted and when, and if they're going to be allowing anybody from the U.S. or other regions badly affected by the pandemic.
Yep, this is going to be a recurring theme. Thailand, they just had a little more grim outlook. It's a very popular tourist location. Their tourism officials say that the earliest they expect any kind of tourism reopening will be the last quarter of 2020. And like many other countries, they're focusing on encouraging domestic tourism within Thailand from their own citizens right now.
All right. France was the most visited country in the world before coronavirus. Now travelers who do enter the country, with the exception of EU citizens or arrivals from the UK, will be subject to a compulsory 14-day coronavirus quarantine, just like Hawaii has, until at least July 24th. Hotels, bars, restaurants will begin to reopen in June, but will be heavily reliant on summer domestic tourism. All signs suggest international travels will not be able to enter for the foreseeable future.
Greece is a little more, because literally 20% of their GDP relies on tourism. They're pushing a little harder. They hope to open tourism in Greece as soon as June 15th. Bars and hotels reopened yesterday, and seasonal hotels will reopen in July. Direct international flights to Greek destinations will slowly start resuming next month on July 1st, and tourists will no longer be expected to take a COVID-19 test or go into quarantine on arrival. So no word whether they're going to really push on international travelers, but I think there may be a little bit more of an opening in Greece. So.
All right, like you said, this is a common theme. Germany intends to lift travel restrictions from fellow EU countries on June 15th, including reopening the Austria-Germany land border. Restaurants begin opening May 18th, which they're open already, and hotels are already open too. They opened this weekend on May 29th. Germany plans to focus on domestic tourism this summer, and is unknown, though, when visitors from outside the EU will be allowed.
Well, here's some good news for United States travelers. Although there are still some unknowns, and it's going to be done in stages and by region. Mexico is aiming to welcome back visitors within the next few weeks. They will focus on domestic tourism at first, but that will be followed by travelers from the US and from Canada, and the rest of the world will be the last to sort of phase into that. The land border between the US and Mexico remains closed to all non-essential travel until at least June 22nd, but Delta will be increasing and or resuming flights from the US to Cancun to Mexico City, Los Cabos, and Puerto Vallarta in the coming weeks. Overall, tourism will reopen at different paces depending on the region within Mexico.
All right, Turkey plans to restart domestic tourism by the close of May and hopes to receive international visitors by mid-June. They may reopen to Asian countries such as China and South Korea first. Istanbul's Grand Bazaar, one of the world's largest market, reopened for the first time in 2 months on June 1st.
The next one on the list is a place that was hit really hard by COVID-19, and that's Italy. Travelers from the EU and UK will be allowed to enter without having to go into quarantine starting June 3rd. They're really pushing hard in a move the government has described as a calculated risk. All museums, including Rome's Vatican museums, have been slowly reopening throughout May with strict social distancing rules. Bars and restaurants were permitted to reopen with reduced numbers of diners as well as plastic shields to divide the customers on May 18th. And also on May 18th, after being closed for over 2 months, St. Peter's Basilica in the Vatican did reopen. So they're wanting to push a little bit more than others.
All right, Spain will grant EU travelers permission to enter without having to quarantine for 2 weeks starting on July 1st. Like many other countries, they're looking to institute a more localized travel bubble. So they're basically trying to, keep it, slowly expand who's coming in before welcoming tourists from further away. No timeline yet is set for letting people from further away come in.
And nearby Portugal is also just still in the process of relaxing lockdown restrictions. They are allowing restaurants, museums, and coffee shops to reopen at reduced capacity starting middle of May. While visitors from outside the EU are banned until at least June 15th, some routes in and out of Portuguese-speaking nations such as Brazil are still operating. The land border between Portugal and Spain, which has been closed to tourists since March, is unlikely to reopen until EU travel restrictions on the whole are lifted.
All right, jumping over to the Caribbean, Aruba is planning on opening its doors to travelers once again at some point between June 15th and July 1st. Tourists will be required to take temperature checks before arrival.
Well, here's another good one for the U.S. St. Lucia will begin a phased reopening on June 4th, so that's in a couple days, when it will lift its borders to visitors from the United States. Those traveling to the country must present certified proof of a negative COVID-19 test taken within 48 hours of boarding their flight. That's actually a good idea.
All right, good. And last but not least, the UK, as of June 8th, all arriving travelers are required to self-isolate for a 14-day period. There is little hope that British travelers will be able to travel abroad this summer, and not much hope for a revival of UK tourism and airline sector in the early summer anyway. So there's no timeline to that. Sorry, we're not ending this list with good news.
Yeah, that was really the toughest one to read because of all the countries, they're basically like, yeah, tourism is not coming back for months. And I'm really bummed about that. I know it's high on your list of places to visit. So, but it is good to at least have the discussion and talk about international travel again. And obviously we hope and pray that the pandemic does not flare back up too severely and just drive us back down again. But we got to remain hopeful. So we wanted to talk about some hopeful news today in the midst of a lot of negative news, and we appreciate you spending the time with us. We'll continue to post fun and uplifting and informative travel content on YouTube, in our Facebook VIP group, which if you're not a part of, please do click the link in the description and become a part of our group because we're posting a lot of fantastic content. So as always, it was great seeing you, Ed. It was great seeing all of our viewers. And until we meet again, stay safe and be well.
Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye.